Hey guys, it's Chad here at Two-Rock. Today I'm going to do a quick little video on how to bias the amp. I've been getting a lot of requests over the months and years, and I've had quite a few phone calls walking through it. First thing I've done is I've taken the back panel off, whether this be on the combo or the head shells. Sometimes it gets in the way, sometimes it doesn't. First thing we're going to want to locate is the bias test point. This is black plastic nub right here. Over the years, different chassis had this in different locations, or the larger heads versus the smaller. They're always going to be in the vicinity of the power tubes. Sometimes it's in between them, sometimes it's over here. The other component you're going to want to find, it's a little tricky to see in this chassis, is right back there. Looks like a 1/4-inch jack hole. This is the bias test potentiometer. Some of the other chassis, it's between the tubes. Alright. You guys are going to want to go and find a small flathead screwdriver, and before we get the amp on and tubes start getting hot, they will burn you once the amp is on and been running for a while, so it's good practice to just do this before we get started so you can get a feel for it. At home, I'm going to recommend you guys, or in the studio when you're doing this, just set the amp on its face. That way it's a little easier to get your hands in there. Right here I'm going to show you. You're going to want to take this flathead screwdriver and stick it up inside the bias test pot. No need to worry about electrocution or getting shocked. There's a small little slot inside. Spin the screwdriver until you can feel it slot up inside, and give it a, just so you know that you've got it inside. Next thing, I went to Radio Shack and I bought a cheap $30 multimeter. For biasing the amp, this is all we're going to need. You've got two things: a red probe for your hot and your common for your ground. The red probe is going to wedge up inside the test point, and the black, it's going to be easy to do, is the clips around the base of the tubes. If you pull it and wedge the probe, you see that? There you go. Wedge it up in there, and now we've got good chassis ground. Next thing we're going to want to do is plug a speaker in. I always like to have a load on the amplifier, even if it's not in use. Let's go ahead and plug it in. We're going to power the amp on, wait a few seconds, and we're going to go ahead and hit the standby switch. Basically at this point this amp's ready to play. You could plug in. Now on our meter, you've got a few different options. Most meters in this lower price point are going to have a rotary switch that you can turn to either volts DC or volts AC. The volts DC is a dotted line with a straight line over the top. Volts AC is a wavy line with dotted lines underneath it. You're going to have a different setting levels on these unless it's auto ranging. And for ours, we're going to take it down to 2. On some meters you might need to take it down to a 200 or a 400, and it'll have an M for millivolts. And basically all we're doing, as you can see here, is moving a decimal point. In the manuals I just deal in volts, so you're going to see readings similar to what we've got going on here. I'm going to go ahead and get the screwdriver up inside the pot so you guys can see how the reading adjusts. Alright. So it's fairly sensitive. And you can see I can go really hot, or I can take it really low. I recommend doing this every month, or if you're changing venues and your primary line voltage is changing from 120 or 110 or 220, 230. You always want to make sure that the output section is running at the optimal range. That way you're going to get the same performance out of the output section. So as you can see, I've got it set to 0.064. It's going to fluctuate a little. It's totally fine. Now this is the coldest setting I recommend. Otherwise the amp's going to start sounding flat and flubby, maybe even a little farty. You can take the bias hotter depending on your tubes, or if you're starting to look for output breakup. But for all intents and purposes, we design around this spec, and you're going to get the most clean headroom right around this range. And that, guys, was pretty much biasing your amplifier. If you guys have further questions on how to do this or need more help, I'm always available through phone or email. Take care.